Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for that warm introduction and an appreciation to Potato South Africa for inviting me here today. I do have a presentation, and while we're waiting for the slides to come up, I want to thank also DG Ramasodi for his exciting talk, which really sets the stage for some of the examples that I'll be giving. I want to focus a lot of my talk on why we're doing what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what's coming out of it to pave the way forward so that we actually enable, through innovation, to evolve, to innovate, and to enable growth and development in the sector. It's come up, thanks. So thank you very much. I see the slide presentations come up. Dr. Ramasodi has already alluded to the aspirations and the priorities of the sector, specifically in terms of the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan. Of course, this functions within a wider sector, and the work that we do, of course, with agriculture through the white paper and the decadal plan in terms of science, technology, and innovation. This has also been preceded by the National Bioeconomy Strategy, which really positions us to look and also rethink how we invest in innovation such that it's much more impactful. The decadal plan then reinforced what are some of the things that we need to be focusing on to ensure that science, technology, and innovation actually touches the lives of people. And that through these strategies and policies, we are enabled to do the work that we need to do much more efficiently and effectively. I think it's well known that within agriculture, we do have a dual economy. We have the triple challenges of unemployment, inequality and food insecurity, particularly at household levels. But interestingly, the agricultural sector has actually been quite resilient. And if Potato South Africa is one of those industries that contributes the most to GDP, you would also know that during COVID, we were one of the most resilient sectors. However, we have challenges in that we have provinces with the least access to basic services where there are large numbers of agricultural households. So it's a challenge, but it's also an untapped opportunity. And a lot of interventions in terms of science, technology, and innovation are moving in that direction. Of course, we also have, in terms of the new food and nutrition survey that was done by the Human Sciences Research Council, that we have large amounts of food insecurity. And if one thinks that within the Northern Cape, within the Western Cape, we have large amounts of stunting, and we have huge amounts of wasting in the Northern Cape, as well as different levels of up to 60% of food insecurity. We must be thinking much more, we must be thinking differently about how we approach our agriculture. A little bit about, in terms of the statistics, agriculture contributes about 3% to GDP, and if you include agro-processing, that goes up to 8%. However, we also have the informal sector, which if you add it up in terms of the recent BFAB baseline, and we're interested to look at the next report that's coming out soon, that this contribution to GDP is actually up to 14%. These statistics also show what I mentioned in terms of agriculture being more resilient, but actually agriculture has also shown to be consistently more resilient and show an upward growth trajectory when compared to other commodities. So what does the stats tell us in terms of how well we are doing in terms of science, technology, and innovation in agriculture? In terms of innovation itself, South Africa ranks 57th out of 132 countries. A large proportion of biotech in agriculture, because biotech in terms of is sort of that golden thread. But the bioeconomy is actually a lot more than just biotech. So government funds about 52% of all R&D, of which 25% is agriculture. And some of the most advanced technologies in agriculture you would appreciate from the first Business Innovation Survey is precision agricultural technologies, soil sensor technologies, and crop sensors. We do have increasing investments in terms of venture capital investment in agriculture, where the most recent SAFCA survey indicated that agri-tech contributes about 7.7% and was in the top 5 sectors. Interestingly, agriculture has a higher than average science citation index when we look at how we compare globally. Higher than average science scientification index as we compare to others globally, and we have large science platforms. Now, I think it's important today, if we look at reflecting on evolve, innovate, enable, it's important to maybe, from the decadal plan, also understand what is the definition of innovation. We've been talking about science, technology, and I think our chair of the Innovation Committee mentioned that even Potato S has evolved to also include innovation. So innovation is the implementation of a new or significantly improved product, goods or services, or process, or marketing method, or an organizational model in business practice, workplace organization, or external relations. So it's quite broad. And what faces us now is that in terms of innovative approaches, there are new theories in terms of how we should be looking at social technological systems in terms of getting the best out of innovative approaches such that we can move towards outcomes and impacts. And these transformative innovation approaches, there's a recent policy paper with the HSRC and the DSTI, indicates that innovation is the element that allows us to ensure that we are doing more than just investing in a technology. If we look at socio-technical systems, transformative innovation approaches are about how are we ensuring that beyond this technology or beyond this method in the laboratory, how are we ensuring that we are taking into account the environment, the systems in which that is going to be used, and the influence we have on the outcomes impact. So that's a transformative innovation theory. And so the lady who's done a lot of work at UJ is Professor Mabula Kramer, and she was actually one of the leads on that study. And those are the approaches we need to be using to ensure that innovation can lead to long-lasting and a positive societal change. Of course, that goes hand in hand with innovation leadership theory in terms of how should we be approaching this. We need to be flexible. Yes, there's a set approach. We are generally transactional. We approach a university, an organization. They perform a research methodology for you. You get the results back. You pay for it. But that functions within a broader system where we need to be looking at collaboratively. Who else benefits from it? How can we co-create and ensure that similar methodologies that we learn and we don't reinvent the wheel each time? And that's where we really need to be thinking about how can we ensure that innovation allows us to make systematic changes. And I think if we say evolve, it's also about us changing our mindsets. If I sit in my office and I do the same thing that I've been doing every day the same way, nothing's going to change. You need to be a much more out there with what's happening. Is it working? Can we demonstrate a different way of doing? Can we co-create? And I think those are the things which are essential in terms of new collaborations and partnerships to ensure that it's not just about the data that I've generated. It's not just about, is that data your IP? Is it data that can also be shared? And how much are we willing to give and take to make the system better? And I think that's also very critical. So the theory of change, you've seen it in the decadal plan in terms of how we want to change agriculture for the better through innovation. And given the key challenges, I think DG Ramasodi alluded to it, but what are some of the interventions that we need to be looking at? Whether it's plant, animal improvement, in this instance, it's vegetable and crop improvement in terms of potatoes. But what else? What are the key areas in terms of agro-processing, looking at how this value chain, how is it set up, where are the people who are working in it? What does the logistics supply chain look at? All of these things are interactive because it's no longer just about investing in a technology, but where you're placing it, what difference is there a market opportunity? Have we analyzed that value chain? And overlaying with that, if we look at modernizing the sector, it's also about how can we use new solutions that are at our disposal, digital technology, flagships, knowledge hubs. How are these systems collectively working to help us do our work better? And I think that's important if we want to realize the outcomes and the aspirations in terms of increased growth, competitiveness, ensuring that we are actually that we have good traceability systems. And once you've laid those foundations, it's much easier to ensure that there is job creation and as well as skills transfer. So this requires coordination, facilitation of multidisciplinary and multi-institutional projects and programs to drive these productive value chains. Now, I've mentioned modernizing agriculture in terms of the decadal plan, and I like the definition of Nicol et al., which says, new technologies should be socially appropriate, affordable, for large-scale use, and effective at improving people's lives. And one of the models that we have incorporated into our business as the Department of Science, Technology, and Innovation has been around the need to ensure that public-private partnerships are the norm, that there is coordination and reduced duplication, that there is transformation and inclusivity, resilience and sustainability, but also ensuring that we're agile. If you take too long, the market takes, if you take too long to develop a technology or to refine it, that opportunity is lost. New growth areas, are we looking enough at what are the niche areas? And you will see in some of the examples, even in the potato industry, this has been the new thinking around step changes in terms of what are the other products that we need to be looking at? What are the best ways to ensure that we are reducing wastage? Are we ensuring that we are aligned with national systems? Can we ensure that we reduce the resources implication? And I think we don't have the advantage of the developed world in terms of abundance of resources and multiple institutions to look at pet projects or areas that are simply of interest. Connectivity and working with each other is really quite critical. So one of the instruments that we have implemented in terms of the decadal plan is the Agricultural Bioeconomy Innovation Partnership Program. So I am the manager at the DSTI, and we have some of our colleagues here from the project management unit within the Technology Innovation Agency. And ABIP specifically focuses on public-private partnerships. Our goal is increased productivity, food security, and sustainable rural economic development. And we focus on new product development, new processing, agro-processing, as well as development and dissemination of technical services. And we work with all different partners in agriculture in terms of the various programs. The beauty of having invested in the bioeconomy strategy, in the implementation, and being part of writing the decadal plan, being part of the processes of how this links with the master plan and how the need for innovation is actually captured, has enabled us to also then, and coming soon, is we are driving what we call the agricultural forestry and fisheries roadmap for science, technology, and innovation. The STI roadmap for agriculture, forestry, and fisheries as the Department of Science, Technology, and Innovation, but with our partners in agriculture, in forestry, fisheries, and other partners in the DTIC, etc. The idea is that that document will serve in cabinet, and it is also intended to support the DSTI through its engagements with Treasury at looking at ensuring that priorities are well recognized, but also that there's greater investment. And if you've seen Minister Nzimande's speech in Parliament, the lament is always that there is not enough funding, because it's one thing to demonstrate and put projects and programs in place. The thing that is lacking is funding for scaling. We have a number of examples in terms of programs and strategic flagships that we've developed, particularly, and many of them with industry. And we also find that at some point we reach a stalemate or plateau. How do we ensure that there's rollout, that there's greater accessibility, there's replication, there's investment for the necessary infrastructure, particularly in rural communities, to ensure that this value chain actually then has an opportunity, a new value chain has an opportunity to reach a market. So I won't go into the detail of some of these slides. I'm going to mention some of the examples later. But it gives you a sense of some of the biggest flagships. So in the interest of time, I will share the slides. And these are some of our biggest flagships in particular. So I will talk to the wheat breeding platform and to the Strategic Innovation Partnership for Oils and Grains and Oilseeds, as well as the Biosecurity Hub. In terms of some of our cross-cutting flagships, because it's also about how are we ensuring that we not only support value chain development, but we look at farmer development support. How do we also ensure that we look at food and nutrition in communities? And these are some of the cross-cutting flagships that we have been looking at. And the beauty of setting up these projects and programs in this way is simply that as you invest or as you look at a new value chain, you look at the ecosystem at the same time. It's always a no-no to invest in a technology and then say, well, where can I plug this? Where can I use it? Can you help me to put it in the market? It's too late. You need to always have in mind the communities, the people who are going to use that technology, so you develop it with them. So part of evidence-based value chain mapping is actually exactly that. I'm not going to go into this slide because it's disturbing what I'm talking about. And so we've done a lot of technical feasibility studies where we looked exactly, for example, in the sorghum value chain, small market, only 125,000 tons, but real opportunities as a climate-smart grain. And so we looked at a technical value chain development analysis to say, well, where are the gaps? Where are the real opportunities? And if we had to invest, and we've got a cluster initiative that's actually looking at this now with a little bit of funding, to say what are the key challenges? Can we unpack this? And can we look at where are the touch points in terms of development of this value chain such that we can grow it? that we can get the benefits. And sorghum, globally, there's a lot of interest. It's bigger markets. There's a lot of processed products that are in the market, including muesli, biscuits, and it's a large market. There's even a sorghum whiskey. So when we were at the Global Sorghum Conference in Montpellier in France 2 years ago, they gave us samples of a sorghum whiskey that they had produced. In terms of agro-processing and value chain development, we've invested quite in a number of opportunities, particularly looking, for example, in the cotton industry. What was the biggest challenge for those communities, those farmers? It was really about the fact that they didn't have those pre-processors on farm, those balers, to process the cotton in order to ensure that it can be transported to the ginnery. And so we invested in some customized machinery that could be used by those cotton balers. We have work that we're currently doing in the marula industry, in particular, looking at, together with the IDC and the Technology Innovation Agency, how do we, setting up this value chain from the back end, the supply side, can we graft the trees and ensure that we increase the supply so that we're not harvesting from the wild? We are busy now with the ARC, setting up a 1 hectare pilot, as well as then we will be looking at the nurseries, etc., such that we've also done the market study and the technical study in terms of marula oil. And the idea is that you cannot build a factory until you've got the different elements of the value chain set up and you are actually ready to be able to process large volumes. And hence, looking at this value chain analysis becomes critical and unbundling some of those gaps before you're ready to build a factory. And I think the IDC is walking this path with us. We also have a project with the potatoes, SA with the potato industry, and all of our projects have some level of co-investment from the industry, particularly even in kind or in training. So it really is about the system level, not just about physical funding. We would prefer to ensure in the long term to ensure that we get more and more investment in the research. But it's also about what does the industry bring into it? Who is benefiting? If we look at the cotton standards, and we're busy looking at developing new cotton standards, taking that back to those farmers and training them to use the new standards would also be part and parcel. And if industry does that, it becomes a win-win for both of us. So I think I've mentioned the work also that we're doing with the potato industry, and it's in particular some of what has been done by the University of Pretoria. We're looking at how to maximize the benefits from some of the waste, so waste valorization, animal feed options, insect protein, and of course some of the frozen meals as well as breakfast foods as well, and that research is already in progress. We've done some work with the honeybush industry and also with the sweet potatoes. We actually work with the Southern Africa Network for Biosciences, and there are 1 or 2 countries in the region that are also vested in this project, and the CSRR leads. And already we've got 6 prototypes, 3 of these of which are in the market, particularly in terms of sweet potato snacks, etc. So these are differing points in terms of their investment. We've done some excellent work in the aquaculture sector, and in particular, I think there's one example. The work we've done with fine bubble technology in terms of nanotechnology that supports both the aquaculture as well as supports both aquaculture and vegetable growth. So there was a 32-meter tunnel that they developed, and it was based in a school. And the beauty of that model is that it was co-funded, but also in terms of food and nutrition, the school benefits in terms of the proceeds that come firstly from selling 50%, and 50% is obviously consumed by the school. Now, this is a real interesting technology that can be rolled out to schools in terms of food and nutrition security, and that is one of the things that we're looking at. Our wheat breeding platform, the key thing with the wheat breeding platform was that government had to step in and de-risk some of the early research in terms of ensuring that cultivars with positive traits, specifically for drought tolerance or pest and disease resistance, could be shared with the breeding companies who could then use this material to develop new cultivars and release them in the market. In turn, SACTA compensates the breeders for putting new technologies in the market. So this becomes a win-win in terms of what are some of the models that we can invest in ensuring that because breeding is quite expensive, it's costly. And somewhere these processes need to meet to ensure that they support each other. And this is some of the ways government is doing that. One of our biggest and best public-private partnership programs, and it's also our oldest, so that also explains why, is the work we're doing with the grain industry. And within this program, there's a number of moving parts, but holistically it comes to some of this research, so different consortiums that look at crop improvement, so it's, for example, your wheat breeding, we've got a maize breeding program, and we've got 3 new maize cultivars that are due to be released soon that are actually drought tolerant. And that is, and then of course it's the Climate Resilience Consortium that looks at the effect of climate change, heat, elevated heat and salt and other aspects that contribute, that affect production. And of course, it's a plant health consortium. And the plant health consortium is interestingly, one of the offshoots of this consortium was the work and the evolvement and the establishment of the National Biosecurity Hub, simply by virtue of the work that the consortium had done. And there's food, and then within this context, with this farmer development support program within the grains industry, there are food and nutrition programs that we've been investing in, with some very excellent results in terms of processing, etc. Human capital development is also very important, not only in master's and PhD students, but also in terms of supporting technicians to be job ready. And this is something new for us, but we've had lots of successes. From the 23 that we invested over 3 years, 5 of them got permanent jobs. So the technicians get appointed, they get placed with industry, they unemploy when they start, and they get job ready, they get the experience and the know-how. And of course, there's also within the grains program, there's also the cultivar evaluation program and the National Grain Research Program, which also evolved through some of this work. I've mentioned the National Biosecurity Hub. It was launched by Minister Dediza in 2022. And there was a summit about 2 weeks ago by Minister Steenhuisen, where we really looked at what would be the potential benefits and what are the opportunities for collaboration, and actually putting in place projects, interventions and programs that help the plant health sector, the plant health and animal health, to be much more effective in supporting innovation that is needed to drive the sector. Interestingly, and I think this model is important because the hub is led with the Department of Agriculture. There is a steering committee which has this bird's eye view, this oversight of what are the things that are essential in terms of biosecurity. And that is a function in terms of the mandate of agriculture. It has access to information in terms of the information hub on trends, on surveillance data of pests and diseases. And this is of interest in terms of the potato industry, because by virtue of these kinds of systems, it's possible to have and to be able to track long-term data and to have those repositories. But within this system, the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation continues to invest in public-private partnership programs that look at new knowledge, that look at new challenges, new problems. And within these public-private partnerships, the knowledge that's generated can then be elevated and captured within the information hub, and certain levels of data can be made available to the regulator in terms of notifiable diseases, etc. So I think that's the critical thing, and it's really starting to move the needle. And DG Mdraga used to always, our previous DG used to say, the real challenge is for us to say, what is it that we need to be doing just to move the needle a little bit, so that we are progressing, we are making those impacts. And with digital technology, with knowledge hubs, it's how creative can we be with the data that we have, such that this informs new research, it informs the status quo to the regulator, but it also allows you to go back and to have an idea of who is working in the network, what are they doing, and to ensure that you're not duplicating work. I'm not going to go into the details of this slide, but there is some work that we do also, and I think the one example maybe, just with the work we do with the oil and protein seeds industry on supporting processing of soybean in communities. And I think that's critical because through this we leverage a lot of funding, and within this project, there is also support for production and support for those farmers to grow soybean commercially. So the processing on the one hand and the production on the other. I think I'm nearing to the end of, this is a very exciting project. And I think when we look at digital technology and precision agriculture, it really becomes a question of who has the data, and if it's not there, can it be developed? Can we put systems? Can we put? Can Metos install some data points where we can collect the data information? And integrated decision support systems requires both historical data, crop estimate data, ongoing research data, the data from these weather stations, and in particular the data from breeding programs. So I think it's interestingly, the one thing that I didn't mention is that in September there will be a launch of a national plant phenotyping platform, because we've invested in the infrastructure to speed up breeding. So, you know, those kinds of data as well that allows you to ensure that that we enable and we are much more agile in terms of breeding. But coming back to the point of digital decision support systems, there are a number of industries, and I know when I spoke with Willie as well, the potato industry has these kinds of systems, but for many other crops, if we look at a challenge like we're doing at the moment in the Eastern Cape or in KZN, if you want to give a farmer the best advice on which crops would work, and multiple cropping systems, mixed farming becomes critical. It's important to have this consolidated decision support systems that provide near real-time insights for crop decision making on farm, and to really ensure that you are providing the best information to a smallholder farmer, but leveraging from existing systems. So giving him the best chance, but not necessarily leveling the playing field, but enabling sharing of data. And we're working with TerraClim and the CSIR as well as the ARC on this particular project. One Food program, I think Lisa Costin, you are in the audience as well as maybe some of our CSIR colleagues. One Food, you often, I think the buzzword now is we have to be looking at One Health approaches. It must be But a lot of the talk has been about antimicrobial resistance. But in agriculture, a lot of our focus is about one food and how one food actually then expands and lends itself to one health. Because if we can, within our domain, have an understanding of what are the hazards affecting food supply, biodiversity, climate, then we can make the right decisions in terms of save meals, save resources, and save species and save resources. So the One Food program actually is a program that synergizes with our biosecurity hub in terms of looking at what are the critical hazards, so it is a program with the UK government, and recently there's also interest from the FAO to take this forward with us. And it builds on the interdisciplinary food systems approach and involves balancing the health of the environment, the people, and food sources, animals, crops, and plants. And it becomes very critical in terms of how we look at system approaches in terms of what we do and what the impact would be, and being able to make such decisions about the various aspects. This is just a last slide which just summarizes some of the work we do. It is my last slide. It gives you a summary of some of the successes we've had with the program in terms of public-private partnerships. We've generated large numbers of prototypes, and we've got one startup company that has been generated. So it was Tokobio, which we actually originally started funding. We've got quite a number of projects and programs in terms of agro-processing and value chain development, and huge potential to, within this, look at food and nutrition challenges, support farmers, etc. And our plea is that we've demonstrated the potential of these transformative, innovative approach and supporting a different way of doing. We would need to look at upscaling that, and through partners, our next target is to say, well, how can we attract more funding to scale this, to ensure that its impact is felt, that there's more products in the market. And I think with agriculture, with any agriculture technology, the challenge is the time to market is always longer. The time to refine is longer. But we need to look at greater investments such that we start to do these things much more quicker, and that's our objective in the next phase. To attract new funding, to get new investment, to look at financing mechanisms, to also look better at how we measure ourselves, such that these impacts can be felt by those communities, and such that, collectively there is growth and development of the sector, of the different commodity sectors through these partnerships. So thank you very much for your attention. I probably went a few minutes over time. I apologize for that, but thank you very much.